Hi there, this is Kirsty. I'm the Great Awakening Generator. This is our neurodiversity segment here with Soraya.
Hi.
And hello. And tonight we thought, we'll just chat a bit, but we thought we might focus a little bit in on parenting as a neurodivergent person, um, particularly when you're a neurodivergent person and so is your child or children. And some of the stuff that brings up. Um, if you're listening, you probably already have an inkling that sometimes it's pretty high intensity. There can be seemingly conflicting needs or interests. So
Mm.
it's an interesting topic to dig into. Yeah. Mm. And so you, Soraya, you hadn't quite figured out yet that you were autistic when you had your son, right?
No, when I had beer, I had no idea um that was a thing for me. Well, that was a thing for both of us actually. Um, yeah, it was like looking back now because like I always felt I was always like comparing myself to other mums, which I know that we all do anyway, or a lot of us do.
Mm.
Um, but it seemed that a lot of other people just, for the most part, had it together more than me, and I was just really confused by that. And um, and then you say it out loud, and it's always because people always want to like come from a kind place of, oh no, everybody finds it hard, but it just was like, but I don't see anyone struggling as much as I seem to be struggling though, and so it made me feel like you know um less than or whatever. But now that I understand it, I'm like, it makes sense now. It makes sense that I was extremely overwhelmed, and the screaming baby and the crying baby all the time was like really overstimulating, and you know just being touched out, and all these things that like I guess a lot of mums experience to a certain degree, but obviously being neurodiverse, it's like multiplied or even more maybe. I don't know, but so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And because, as you say, parenting is intense for everybody or nearly everybody because it's just such a big life transition and it's
Mm,
just kind of relentless. I mean, that's a kind of negative word to use, but I think it's just accurate in that you're just needed all of the time. Uh, and it's a lot. But if you bring into that sensory things, and I know for me, for example, noise and sound and chaotic sources of sound is a massive trigger for me, or, an irritation. It's something that really stresses me out. And, and so it's kind of like nature's hilarious joke that, my firstborn was a reflex baby, like a very intense reflex baby. And yeah, he just screamed and screamed and screamed. Um, yeah. And, like there's so much, I think, and in that situation, it's obviously more extreme than if you have a baby who sleeps quite well, they grizzle a bit, but they don't cry for hours. So it's
mm,
already more intense. What I noticed about that was it brought up the sensory things, it brought up all kinds of um, feelings of failure. I think that was actually the biggest one for me. Like I should be able to soothe this baby. It feels
mm,
like the most simple thing that a mother should be able to do for their child. And so that was very intense emotionally. But in terms of the actual physical pressure of it, which was a lot, it was kind of like in the early days, because I was really in survival mode. The intense need of my child kind of almost overrode my own sensory needs. But of course, that meant that there was a cumulative stress that built up and up in my nervous system. And, you know, honestly, it's taken me years to kind of recover. Even now, if I hear a crying baby, I have like a visceral response. And if I see a mother or hear a mother and child, and she doesn't, I'm saying mother, any parent, you know what I mean? The baby isn't kind of picked up immediately and attended to. It's like I want to run over there and scoop the baby up, because I have this kind of trauma wiring of like, quick, serve the baby, or the screaming is going to go on for like days and days. Yeah.
Yeah, I can fully relate to that experience of, the crying and not for any minute suggesting that, any parent that doesn't immediately get up and serve the baby is a bad parent at all. But again, I've been in those situations where parents, the babies have been, grizzly or crying or whatever, and the parents seem to just be able to happily continue the conversation that they might be having with someone or whatever. But me, I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, like the baby, like. So I really get that. Were you aware of the fact of your neurodivergence at that time as well?
No. So
No.
I knew that I was very sensitive. I knew that I'd already, had struggles with anxiety and depression, and, in some kind of windows of time prior to ever becoming pregnant. So, I guess, if you're kind of being logical about it, it makes sense that I'd be more likely to experience postpartum anxiety, even if my baby was chilled, which, they weren't. But I really expected to find it a lot easier than that.
Yeah.
As most parents do. But yeah, I did. And I was very bonded to my baby, and I loved him intensely. And so I feel fortunate in that, because sometimes if you're very anxious, there can be a sense of separation from the child. And that's, again, it's not the mother's fault. I didn't experience that, but I just felt this really massive overwhelm. And it was like the collision of a baby who is, autistic, ADHD. We didn't know. We knew there was something about him because he was so intense right from the get-go. Plus he had a tongue tie and the reflux, which was like this perfect storm of a baby who was awake all the time, crying all the time. And then coupled with all these feelings about needing to get it right, needing to be able to solve things for the child, and just feeling super overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's super hard. Yeah. We had a real similar experience to you guys as well. Bear suffered really bad with reflux, and we knew that he was different. Like you said, very intense, just different. And then, people would kind of say, oh, it's just normal babies, or, oh, it's a boy thing. And I'd be like, oh, well, I'm seeing him next to other babies and next to other boys, and it's just not the same. It's really not.
Yeah.
But people have like these well-meaning things that they love to say to try and, I don't know, make you feel better or something. But actually we found that it just kind of annoyed us. Like Bear's dad and I, we were kind of like, we just felt so invalidated because we were struggling so much, both of us. And I mean, Bear's dad's not even neurodiverse, but I mean, well, he was struggling, of course, because I was struggling. So that just knock-on effect, and it impacted all of us. Yeah, it was a
yes.
I'd say a traumatizing time.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely found it traumatic, and it's sad to say, because I didn't not love my baby. I love him so much, or both of them. I'm talking about the first baby because that's the initiation into parenthood, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was traumatic. And, as I say, I still feel that now sometimes. If I,
Yeah, do you still have moments where you think back to those times and you can feel that, like, there's that wound there, hey, like deep wound of whatever it was that you were experiencing that's
mm,
kind of there. For me it kind of feels like I I feel like his first year at least of his life was stolen from me, and not from anyone or anything in particular, but just the whole fact that I was not able to enjoy that at all.
yeah,
It was sheer survival, and it
yes,
was
yeah.
it. I just look back now, and I just, yeah, as I said, I feel like it's been totally stolen from me, and I'll never get that back. And I find that really hard to deal with. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, it is what it was. It was not really enjoying it because it was so stressful. So stressful.
But I mean, this topic can kind of go, away from neurodiversity even a little bit, because I just um the society that we're in these, how we're just not as part of like these communities, or even just children with multiple different people helping, is just, in my opinion, a recipe for exactly what we went through.
Totally, totally. And it's just magnified if you have a high needs child. Is there, I think our connection's
Yeah.
breaking up a little bit.
I can hear you well.
Okay. It's all right. Yeah, but
And
just in
is it,
case
is
that
it good?
didn't record well,
Yeah.
it's just yeah, it is. It's just that thing of not being in community makes everything so much harder. It's very isolating. Yeah.
So isolating.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, wow. I mean, it's like the things that we learn along the way, right? I often think about how I would do things now, knowing what I know, but of course, that doesn't change the way things were. Um, so yeah, yeah.
Mm.
That's why for me, I think, like, yeah, it's it's just an in subject. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so then for you, as if you go past the very baby stage, I mean, I still think your son's a baby, but it's all relative.
Of
But
course.
you come out of that super intense first year and a half. What's some of the things that stand out to you that are challenging, or just that, are a learning experience with the parenting?
Um, it's really hard for me to answer those questions in like in a general way, because
Mm,
so much has happened for us in that time. Like Bear's dad and I split up, and that came with its own challenges, and even just being in a relationship with him and his family came with its own challenges too. So,
mm,
but that's kind of separate, or is it? Or is it actually? You could argue that it's not separate to neurodiversity, because I am convinced that a large part of all of that mess was to do with the fact that I am autistic, and nobody understood that, and yeah, that played a big role in a lot of, I guess, disagreements or misunderstandings, in the family and in the relationship. So, um, yeah, for me that was big, and then I just, this is a really big topic and question for me. I'm trying to narrow it down into like this box of what we're talking about with regards to neurodiversity and motherhood, but I'm finding that really difficult, because there's so much that's happened for me, as I say, the family, the relationship, just the trauma of transitioning into motherhood, but then having a whole slew of mental and physical health conditions pop up in the last year and a half to 2 years, just progressively just seem to out of nowhere that all of these health conditions have just kind of like popped out of nowhere, and they've all just come one after the other. It's like just a roll-on effect of all these different health conditions. So trying to navigate all of these health conditions on top of like a separation, on top of not having my own family here in New Zealand, on top of not really having much of a support network because I struggle to make friends because I'm autistic, on top of like trying to navigate being a neurodivergent mum to a neurodivergent child. Like I just, where would I even begin?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe we need to narrow it down. And so one of the things that I notice is kind of more of an issue as my boys get older, because I think it is because I'm actually coming out of that real survival mode, which is great.
Yeah.
But it almost creates more of a tension now. Like, I'm just experiencing now what a lot of mums would have experienced when they decided to go back to work when their kid was 1 or something like that. That kind of push-pull between the child's needs and your own needs. Whereas previously I didn't even have space to think about my own needs.
Yeah.
But now that I do a little bit, it's more obvious, how much I really crave just solitude, silence, really just being left that alone. But in large part, not only because I'm idealistic anyway, but partly because my children are neurodivergent. I have them at home, right? So they're homeschooled.
Yeah.
There's no kind of state-funded babysitting. They're just there all the time, and they're very loud, and they're very intense, and they're very curious, and not as touchy as they used to be. But it's almost like after a certain age, I suddenly became much less tolerant of everyone just being up in my grill all the time. And so it's this really kind of delicate dance of like creating some boundaries while still being a full-on mother and caretaker. And it's tricky. I kind of pendulum sometimes between martyrdom and just wanting to run away. And it's about trying to balance it. It's really hard. Yeah.
It's super hard. It's super hard. And again, I mean, I don't know what your support network looks like, but again, if you don't have much of a support network, then it makes it almost impossible to have that balance. So, but yeah, it is super important. And I guess like it becomes more apparent, like, before we have kids, I guess, just have our alone time and it's more easy. And so don't really think about how important that is until you have kids and you never get that. And then you kind of just like, you go, in that survival mode, and then you have a better time to like step aside from it when you're like, oh my gosh, I I really need this, and this is what I need more of. It's that alone time to like, I don't know about you, but do you find that alone time it really feels like as if you were plugging a battery in? It really is like a recharge, isn't it? And it's like you come back with so much more capacity. But the way that I've always described it is like, because I feel like for a lot of people, it's like you can have like, maybe, I don't know, maybe neurotypical people, I would imagine anyway, and I could be wrong, but I would imagine that it's more like, they can do their 9 till 5 Monday to Friday and then have the weekend off, and that's their recharge. Like, because everybody needs a recharge, right? But for me, it's like I need more of those like like pauses like more frequently, even if they're at smaller doses, like even if it's not like a whole weekend. I need like 30 minutes out of every couple of hours. I need 30 minutes of just being alone. Like it can't be like 5 days and then 2 days off. It has to be like, if I'm with beer for the whole day, for example, like I can do like a couple of hours and then I'm like, right, I really need to be alone for a bit now. And just need to keep doing it that way. I mean, I'm not sure how you find it, but I need those smaller breaks frequently, if that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I ideally also need that. And I can get time alone now, but that's so new. So I have like years and years of feels like time to catch up on. And I kind of joke that maybe I would recover if I went and had like a year off in a cave by myself. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm serious. I would miss you, but I'm serious. And because the reality is that if you have an autistic or ADHD or whatever child, a lot of the time they can't cope with being separated from you. And if they're very loud, they can't cope with not talking to you. If they're very kinesthetic, they can't cope with not touching you. And like PDA children, often it's like they need someone to externally regulate their nervous system for them,
Yeah.
and it's you. And so, this is what I experienced for years and years. And so my boys are 7 and 10 now. And fortunately for me, they do play together. So I'm just getting to a place now where I have these windows of time. Sometimes they're quite long, where no one's touched me, no one's screamed at me, no one's asked me for anything, but they'll be interspersed with like really high intensity. But that just like was impossible for so long. And so like my nervous system was just like winding. And it's so many parents find themselves in this situation, and it's yeah, it is. It's just like where's the support when we don't live in community? No wonder people are having trouble with mental health and
Oh,
basically
absolutely.
having breakdowns. Yeah.
For sure. I've I want to be careful with what I say here, but I through my own kind of pattern recognition / experience / just what seems to make sense to me, I just think that postnatal depression and things like that just wouldn't be nearly as common as they are if mothers were more supported.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just such a big factor in it. And I mean, I remember one thing was my ex is now obviously, but his mother said to me once, oh, I think you've got postnatal depression. And I just, I laugh about it now because we had asked her for help and support because we needed it, and it was a oh well, life's hard, get on with it response that we got from her. And she would never help, and it just kind of made me laugh because I thought, but she's like, oh, I think you should see a therapist, you've got postnatal depression. And I thought, well, or maybe I could have a hand. That would be great, maybe I wouldn't need to see, like, it just seems so bizarre to me that like you would go to therapy to talk about not having support with
This was exactly my experience in terms of I was offered antidepressants after I had both of my children. Both of the times I declined them because I was like, well, it's mostly situational. I literally, I just need some help, and also I needed to be heard as well. I needed help and I needed to be heard. I just wanted someone to listen to like how hard it was, not offer any advice, listen to my grief because I had I'd say breastfeeding grief with both my children, because I had so much trouble feeding them. And it was, one of those griefs where no one's died, but it's still a grief. And I just needed to like feel it and have it acknowledged. And then, and just some help, because you can't just go on and on not sleeping and but you also can't not, because your child still needs you.
It's just not what we're designed to do. It's not the way it's supposed to be. And for neurodivergent people, I think that the reason that a lot of neurodivergent parents struggle as much as we do is because, well, obviously we are just, so much more sensitive to things. But I think we're just more sensitive to the fact that this is not what we are designed to do. This is not how it's supposed to be. But we live in this society that is fully thinks that that's the way it should be these days, and does it that way.
And it's only been like a few couple 2 or 3 generations in sort of Western society that it's been like that. It's not natural, and I think it's already starting to, in theory, shift away from it. Like, a lot of people like us realize that it's not sustainable and it's bad for mental health, but it's hard to shift out of it because everyone's in their very kind of independent lives and their very separate family units and homes. And
well, the world that we live in is just currently built in a way that not many people have much capacity.
So busy.
It's busy, it's stressful, it's demanding, it's disconnected, it's a lot of things that mean being there to support mothers is out of most people's capacity.
So
we need to redesign the system,
totally. And it will happen, but it's hard when you're in the in-between, and that's what it is for most people.
Absolutely.
Someone's got to build it, and so it's
for sure tough. And I just, another thing that just comes to mind as well is how there was this time, it was actually during the lockdowns that we had, and I was talking to my ex's mother and saying, oh, it must be really hard for like some of the mums that are in lockdown, not being able to receive any kind of outside support or that kind of stuff, just having a general chat. And she goes, well, I was thinking about this, and that's what we did back in my day, and we coped just fine. And I just thought, but the key word is coped. That's the key word.
Not,
like, you
not
coped.
thriving, surviving.
You didn't thrive, you survived. And I thought to myself, that's not what we're supposed to do. Like, we're not supposed to just cope in life. Like, it's not what we're here for. We're here to thrive and to evolve and to expand and all of these amazing things. And I just thought to myself, I don't want to cope. I don't want to just cope. I mean, that's what I am doing. And that's what I've been doing for a long time. Well, no, it is better these days. I do. Well, actually, funnily enough, now that Bear's dad and I aren't together anymore, I actually get more time, to myself and stuff.
Like when it's his turn.
Which is great. And I definitely do manage to do a lot more for myself. And I do get a lot more time for myself these days, I have to say. But it's just funny, I think, how people can just accept things that have become the norm as the norm.
And of course there are people who have heaps of family support like that still exists in some families.
Yeah.
It's just not as common. And then some people have managed to build themselves networks with friends, and it really depends a lot on where you live and whether you happen to connect with people around you.
Yeah.
There's all those kind of things involved. But I mean, I barely left the house with either of my kids before 6 months, and then not very much in the first year. You know, even just getting to things like I don't know, a wriggle and rhyme or a play group or something was like massively stressful for me.
Mm.
And then I wouldn't necessarily feel very connected with people when I got there either.
That's a big struggle. And yeah, this is the thing I think with being a neurodivergent parent, that has to be a really common experience is, you know, feeling that pressure of, oh, I've had a baby and oh, I must attend all these mummy baby groups, and but being like, but and obviously at the time we didn't know that we were autistic, but being like, and I specifically remember telling my Plunkett lady, like, I said to her, like, I specifically remember saying something along the lines of, I really struggle to connect with people, and there's only certain types of people that I can connect with. And like going to a mummy baby group, just like the thought of it makes me anxious. I could just like, I don't know, like it's just not, it just wasn't something that attracted me at all. In fact, as I say, it made me feel anxious, the thought of it. And I did go along to a couple of things, you know, a couple of times, but that, you know, was reminded of why I didn't like going to these things. I just, you know, didn't happen to find any connection with any of the other mothers that were there. And not only that, but it was, you know, my child was the only one that was different to all the other children, and all the other children would be like playing nicely, like the bubbles and yeah, like, you know, whatever, and listening to them like dancing. My child would be like up on the stage biting the other kids, like just wrecking absolute havoc in the place. And then, you know, I would feel like and it was so obviously different as well, like it wasn't just, you know, he was just so obviously different to the other children. And that would give me anxiety as well, because I remember just walking away from these places and crying and crying and crying, because I just thought, like, this is horrific. Like, it's absolutely horrific. I feel like I can't take my child anywhere. Like, I'm trying to get myself out, and that's hard enough as it is in itself, trying to connect with other people, and then having a child who is just so different to the other children. And it it was problematic in the sense that, you know, he did go through that phase of being quite aggressive with other kids, and just not following, you know, any rules, and doing his own thing, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It just made me feel like I couldn't go to these places, because I felt, and whether or not it was true or not doesn't matter, but I felt like we were, you know, a problem there, like we were a bit of a nuisance to everyone else. Um, so yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's a cliche, but it's that thing of like finding your tribe. And I would say, you know, I made some really beautiful friends at my play center, but we were all the kind of outlier ones. We were the kind of extra crunchy granola, kind of out there parents. And that's like, you know, and then probably more likely to be neurodivergent. And then we all left the play center because the play center was too mainstream for us.
Yeah.
And then, you know, but kind of obviously, once I kind of entered the homeschooling scene, it's been really easy to make friends. We still have trouble leaving the house to actually meet up with people.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the homeschooling community, that word is kind of, you know, what does it mean? But, you know, it's full of out of the box kind of people, because
Yeah.
I forget now how kind of you know, some people think it's so out there and so almost rebellious to not have your kid in school. It's very kind of normal to me because I'm used to it, and these are the people I hang out with, and most of our friends are neurodivergent, and it's and if they're not, it doesn't matter, because they're free thinkers, they're open-minded, they're all of those things. And if they weren't, they probably wouldn't be homeschooling, especially kind of unschooling or natural learning, which is kind of our jam, although we don't only hang out with unschoolers. So that's been wonderful in terms of meeting people, but
finding your tribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
I mean, yeah, we'll finish up soon, but I don't know, maybe do we want to try and touch on some of the things that have been helpful? I'm trying to think what's been helpful to me in navigating these years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, honestly, for me, what was the most helpful was breaking up with Bear's dad. And because we weren't, it was what it was at the time, and it wasn't working. So doing that allowed me to focus on myself and have more time to myself. So for me, that was crucial. I needed that time to just heal and come out of burnout. And I mean, I think I'm probably still in it a little bit, but definitely better. Definitely better. Like yeah, much, much better. But yeah, that, and then also, after when I split with Bear's dad, that was around the time that I also received my diagnosis. So that was really helpful to me, because then I could go on that journey of like understanding myself better, understanding the past better, understanding, relationships and why things have happened the way that they have, and all of that kind of stuff. It really helped. And then it helped me to then connect with other neurodivergent people, which has been really helpful for me too, because other neurodivergent people make me feel less lonely in this world and more understood. So for me, where I'm at in my life, that's what's been helpful to me as a parent. And then also, making my house more sensory friendly, like, all of my sheets and blankets and everything are like super soft, and I've got headphones now, and I've got, all of these things that, fidget toys lying around the house and all of that kind of stuff for Bear and I, because he's the same. He loves his sensory friendly blankets and all of that kind of stuff. And, making the house more sensory friendly to us has been another super helpful tool as well. Being able to be kinder to myself with the newfound understanding of my neurodiversity as well, like, not kicking myself so much for the things that I thought that I should do because of the expectations that society had placed on me. I'm like, okay, if I need to do this, that's what I need right now. Like being able to just intuitively listen to what my body wants and what my body needs, as opposed to what I think I should be doing or that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's what's been for me the most helpful.
Yeah. And I'd say for me, that's probably the biggest one, is the self-compassion. Yeah, because I thought I'd done a lot of work on all my emotional stuff before I had the kids, and then kids naturally bring up a lot more stuff because they trigger it, right?
Yeah.
And so it was like peeling an onion and just discovering how many more layers of, perfectionism and judgment against myself and all of those things. It was a lot more than I than I kind of bargained on. I thought I'd kind of peeled it away already, but there was a whole lot more under there. So it was, kind of a raw but helpful experience in the big picture, because I'm much stronger for it, and and also more gentle and more willing to, as you said, ask for or seek out what I need in addition to what the children need, so that I can be there for them.
Yeah. That's like that, being able to advocate for ourselves and our children is massive. Like, just, yeah, huge.
Mm.
You know, I, it's like a perfect example is just recently I was somewhere where I needed to fill out some paperwork, and I find, you know, as a neurodivergent person, paperwork just insanely overwhelming. And and in the past, before I understood that I was autistic, I would have had like an internal meltdown where it would have been like bubbling up, like feeling like I needed to like cry, or just feeling so overwhelmed, but like hiding that because, you know, I don't want to show that in front of, you know, like, because how stupid would that look? And that was my thinking back then. But I didn't. Like, I was just like, and not only did they give me like all this paperwork to fill out, they were asking me all these questions at the same time, and my brain was just like, whoa, like, hold on. And I just felt safe enough to just cry because I could feel it bubbling up inside me, and I wanted to let it out. So I did let it out instead of keeping it inside. And I just said, look, this is too much for me. Like, I can't keep up with all this information. It's super overwhelming. Please, can I have some help to fill out this paperwork? And they were like, sure, like, sure, absolutely. Like, you know, and I was like, whereas in the past, I would have just, you know,
Struggled.
kept all of
Yeah.
that inside, and I would have done the paperwork, and I would have, like, you know, got so, and afterwards I would have walked out and I would have been like burnt out for the rest of the day. You know, I would have gone home and just, you know, not felt good about myself. But I felt so good walking out of there knowing that I'd received the support that I needed. You know, it was okay. I was able to advocate for myself. I was able to cry because that's what I needed to do in that moment. You know, I was just able to be me.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
it.
so
Finding
huge.
ways to soothe yourself and then allowing yourself to actually use them, and remembering to as well, because sometimes, you know, we know there's certain things that will calm us in terms of sensory and stuff like that. But over
Mm,
past a certain level of overwhelm, it's very tough to remember to employ these things.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And you know, having intense children is the best training in terms of self-awareness and noticing, you know, when your emotional levels start to raise and trying to pause before you respond, because
Yeah,
it's the best training, because it doesn't matter if you failed 10 times, you'll have another opportunity in like 5 minutes, because they'll do it again and again and
literally.
again.
They will.
Amazing self-development. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
It really
And
is.
I would say, like, from like a higher level, like spiritual kind of a viewpoint, one of the things that consistently helps me when I'm feeling really overwhelmed is to just remember, like, you know what, these children chose me.
Mm.
I always feel like crying when I say that. I'm such a crier. But, you know, I
I
do
love
believe
that.
it's true, you know? Yeah.
I
They
love
chose
because
us for a reason. Yeah.
I love that saying, and I fully believe that as well. Like, just as we chose our parents, which is something like I've never really gone where you have with the whole bear chose me thing, although I have thought about it, but not, I guess, as in depth as you. But I've definitely done it on the other side, where I've thought about, you know, how sometimes how angry I am with my parents, but then remembering that I chose them. Like, I chose to have these experiences with these parents for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
chose that.
That's
So
right. And
yeah.
I think a lot of it is like, you know, if you're the black sheep, you're here to break cycles of generational trauma, and it's going forward and it's going back, and it's, you know, like, it's airy fairy, but it's big work. It really is. And it
It's
matters.
really big work, and
Yeah.
it really matters. And I love, you know, as hard as it is, honestly, like, I do feel proud of myself as a mum. And And that's like, you know, we all get our days where we feel like, oh, could have done better today or whatever. But as a whole, I'm like, man, like, given, you know, the cards that I've been dealt on this motherhood journey and everything, I'm like, I know I'm doing a pretty good job, eh? And I'm glad that I am, you know, doing that whole cycle breaking thing, you know. And I know I'm not deluded. Like, I absolutely 100% know that, you know, I will not get it perfect, like no parent can. But I also know that, you know, I'm quite comfortable, and I think other people find this bizarre because I've said this before and had mixed reactions, but I'm quite comfortable with the idea that, you know, Bear might have a level of insecurity or anxieties or whatever that is as he's older because of some things that I've put onto him, you know, because I'm not 100% perfect. I'm not 100% healed, and I never will be.
No.
And I'm comfortable with that idea because I'm comfortable also with the idea that I know that when he's older and when he will feel safe enough to come to me and express that and say, hey mom, can we talk about when this happened when I was a child and how that made me feel? And he's going to have the space to be able to do that, and it's going to be a non-judgmental space and an open and a loving and a caring space. You know, I'm not going to, you know, play the victim card and be like, oh, I'm the worst mum in the world or something like that, you know. because that's just the reality of it, you know. And I think that the most important thing here is the repair and the trust that we can build with our kids.
I think it's super important. It is, because sometimes I'm irritable, sometimes I'm a little bit shouty. Like, I'm very patient. I would say most people would say I'm a very patient mum, but yeah, I do get grumpy. And then it's right, it's about repairing and letting them know, like, that was to do with me and me feeling stressed and me feeling overwhelmed. It's not their responsibility.
No.
But in some ways it's really great for them to see you being a real human, a real fallible human, and being honest about it, and also, you know, giving us, if we model giving ourselves grace, then they're like, oh, okay, I can make mistakes, and then I can repair
it. And like, I mean, I don't know about you, but you know, like, adult to adult, I have so much respect for someone who can come to me and say, hey Soraya, I'm sorry, like, that was not cool what I did, like, I should not have done that, you know, forgive me, or whatever, you know, in their own wording. Like, that to me is so, like, I have so much respect for people that can just own up to their mistakes. For me, that says a lot about a person.
Yeah, no, me too. Because it takes courage. And I also recognize that for some people, they're so kind of damaged that it's very difficult for them to apologize. And I was like that for a long time because I hadn't learnt how to repair, and I hadn't learnt how to express feelings and how to apologize because I didn't feel safe to. And so even up into my kind of 20s, I'd have situations where I was so sorry, and it was like I almost physically couldn't bring myself to communicate that, and that caused so much internal pain. And so it's this incredibly important skill to learn.
Yes,
it really is.
absolutely.
That's it. So if you knew me in my 20s, I'm really sorry. So sorry.
I didn't know
yeah
yet.
That was a bit of a mess.
I only know you now, and I love what I see. And I also love, by the way, that you, like, because I just found this out about you right here, right now, that you said that you're a crier, and I didn't know that about you, but I love that because you're a crier.
Yeah, I so am. And even it's really funny, we'll watch like a family movie sometimes, you know, it's a kids movie, and even if I know what's going to happen, I'll be like, oh, okay, here comes the sad bit. And the kids will just be sitting there deadpan, and I'm like ugly crying and sobbing. Even if I'm reading the book, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I have to pause.
Yes.
And I have to like gather myself because I'm crying. And okay, spoiler alert, if you haven't read Harry Potter, close your ears. We got to the bit where Dobby dies. And I was like, oh, and my throat closed up, and I was like, oh. But yeah, it's good for the kids to see that I'm like, oh, I'm showing emotion, but I'm like, I literally can't help it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it cannot be helped.
Mm.
Mm. It
Yeah.
always feels so good after a cry.
Yeah, it really can feel amazing after a good cry. Hey, yeah, I've had a couple of those in my life, and you end up feeling like super tired and exhausted after, but it's like, man, I needed that. So good.
Yeah, yeah. And I was watching, Andrew Huberman, he's the neuroscientist guy, and he's got various kind of biohacking things, and he's quite sciencey about it to make it mainstream. But some of the information's really good, really interesting. And there's been one doing the rounds about the physiological sigh, and it's what you
Mm.
do when you finish crying. It's like two short,
Ah,
sharp inhales and then an exhale, and you do it
that's
automatically if you've been
right.
crying. And it's like the best de-stressor, you know how, and little kids do it so spontaneously. It's that.
Oh my goodness, I never even put those two together. I know about the physiological side because I do it whenever I'm feeling anxious or whatever. But I didn't realize that, yeah, we do that when we're crying.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Because the body knows. The body knows. Yeah. Amazing.
What? I love that. That's
I
so
love
cool.
it.
Thank
And
you
I'm
for
actually
telling
going
me
to
that.
teach it to my kids because obviously they do it when they really cry. But they're
Yeah.
old enough now to like maybe sometimes remember to do it
Oh
when
my
they're not that
God. My
upset to
mind is
cry,
so
but
blown
they're
right
like,
now. You do realize
I
I'm
need to
getting
chill out. Yeah.
yes. Oh my gosh. I'm totally gonna go away from this phone call and go on a bit of a reading thing before I go to bed.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm.
That is, yeah, we definitely do that when we cry. That's crazy. Cool. Thank you.
Mm. All right. I guess we should finish up for tonight. It's been so nice to
Yeah.
chat. Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
obviously so much more to say about neurodivergent parenting, and more will come up spontaneously. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just good to acknowledge that it's a lot, and yeah, if you can get support, please ask for it if it's available, and yeah,
Yeah.
give yourself
Absolutely.
grace. I think just give yourself grace. Mm.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Awesome chatting, Kirsty. See you again. We'll talk about that later, I guess, but
Yeah,
soon. And yeah, thanks for being here.
yeah, you too. All right. See you next
Take care.
time.
Bye.